My name is Mark Thompson, and for the past 10 years, I've been diving headfirst, sometimes literally, into the world's most elusive mysteries as a lead explorer for TerraQuest. Based out of a high-tech headquarters in San Francisco, TerraQuest isn't your average dusty museum operation. It's a global powerhouse, blending archaeology with adventure, powered by multi-million-dollar budgets from shadowy government agencies and eccentric billionaires who crave owning a piece of the past. We use drones, satellites, and submersibles to hunt for ancient artifacts and lost civilizations that could rewrite history books. Me? I grew up in a small coastal town in Oregon, obsessed with shipwrecks and old pirate tales my grandfather spun by the fire. That curiosity turned into a degree in marine archaeology, and after a few freelance gigs uncovering Mayan ruins in Belize, I landed at TerraQuest. Now, at 38, with a few scars from close calls and collapsing tombs, I'm the guy who calls the shots on high-stakes expeditions. My team is my lifeline. Small, but we've become like family through the chaos. There's Alex Rivera, our 32-year-old tech genius from Mexico City, who can jury-rig a broken sonar array with duct tape and a laptop in under an hour. He started as a hacker kid, tinkering with robots in his garage, got recruited by TerraQuest after winning a global coding competition, and now he's the one keeping our gadgets humming. Alex is all energy and sarcasm, with tattoos of circuit boards snaking up his arms and a coffee addiction that rivals mine. Then there's Jordan Hale, 35, our brilliant historian from London who can recite ancient Greek epics from memory and crack hieroglyphs faster than most people solve crosswords. She came from academia, frustrated with stuffy professors, and joined us after publishing a groundbreaking paper on lost Inca trade routes. Jordan's the calm in our storm, methodical, with a dry wit and a collection of antique books that she guards like treasure. The three of us have bonded over campfire stories in the desert and near misses in jungle downpours. We've unearthed Saharan cities swallowed by sandstorms and decoded temple walls deep in the Amazon. But even with all that under our belts, the thrill never fades, and nothing could have braced us for the signal that kicked off our wildest dive yet. It all began on a crisp morning aboard the Horizon, our floating command center, a massive research vessel anchored in the vast, empty expanse of the Pacific Ocean, hundreds of miles from the nearest land. We'd been out here for weeks, deploying our fleet of UUVs, unmanned underwater vehicles, basically autonomous robot subs that act like tireless scouts, mapping the seafloor with sonar and cameras. These little marvels are equipped with AI to spot anomalies, and they're tough enough to handle crushing depths. That day, I was in the ops room, a dimly lit nerve center crammed with glowing screens, humming servers, and the faint smell of salt water and instant noodles, when UUV-47 sent back a urgent ping. This particular drone had been charting a forgotten corner of the ocean, way off the beaten path. No shipping lanes or tourist cruises in sight. Suddenly, its sensors lit up like fireworks, a gigantic mass lurking miles beneath the waves, nestled in a monstrous underwater chasm, a tectonic scar so deep and wide it could engulf entire mountain ranges without a trace. As the data flooded in, grainy sonar images and 3D renders streaming across my monitor, I felt a jolt of adrenaline that made my coffee go cold. The shapes weren't random boulders or volcanic debris. They were precise, artificial. Jagged outlines suggested walls towering like skyscrapers, interconnected chambers that hinted at buildings, and what looked like grid patterns. Could they be streets? Ancient, impossible streets, preserved in the abyss. My pulse hammered as I zoomed in, tracing the echoes with my finger. This wasn't some sunken ship from the 1800s. The scale was biblical, predating any recorded history we'd touched before. I bolted to the comms and buzzed Alex and Jordan, who were in the lab tweaking equipment. "Guys, drop everything and get in here," I said, my voice steady but edged with excitement. They rushed in, Alex with his hoodie half-zipped, Jordan clutching her ever-present notebook, and huddled around the screen. "This could be it," I told them, pointing at the render. "Something older than Atlantis, older than anything. We're talking a civilization lost to time, buried where no one's ever looked." Their eyes widened, mirroring my own mix of awe and nerves. Little did we know, this discovery was about to drag us into depths far darker than the ocean floor. With the UUV-47's data burning a hole in our screens, we didn't waste a second. We dove straight into research mode, turning the Horizons ops room into a whirlwind of laptops, maps, and half-empty coffee mugs. Jordan, ever the meticulous one, immediately accessed our database of geological surveys for the region. She explained it all to us in her clear, professor-like way. The site was in what's called the Abyssal Fracture Zone, a massive scar on the ocean floor formed millions of years ago when two tectonic plates, the massive slabs of Earth's crust, slowly ripped apart like a giant zipper coming undone. This created an enormous underwater canyon, deeper than Mount Everest is high, plunging over 11 kilometers into pitch-black nothingness. Sunlight doesn't penetrate past a few hundred meters, so down there, it's eternal night, with crushing pressures that could flatten a tank and temperatures hovering just above freezing. No human expedition had ever ventured into this particular chasm. It's too remote, too dangerous, and too deep for even the most advanced subs until now. "Think about it," Jordan said, pushing her wire-rimmed glasses up her nose as she zoomed in on a digital elevation map. "This place has been isolated since before dinosaurs roamed, perfect for preserving something ancient." Meanwhile, Alex hunkered down at his workstation, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he processed the raw data from the UUV. He built a 3D model of the anomaly using specialized software, layering in sonar pings and magnetic readings to create a virtual reconstruction. What emerged was jaw-dropping. The mass covered at least a square kilometer, like a small city block hidden under sediment and rock. There were odd metallic signatures pinging back, echoes of materials that didn't match any modern alloys or known historical wrecks, like Spanish galleons or WW2 subs. "No rust patterns, no organic decay," Alex muttered, rotating the model on screen. "Whatever this is, it's not from our timeline." Jordan leaned in, cross-referencing with sediment core data we'd pulled from nearby ocean drilling projects. "It's old, Mark," she said, her voice hushed with awe, eyes wide as she pointed to layered strata on the graph. "The buildup of silt and volcanic ash around it suggests it's been entombed for at least 10,000 years, maybe more. This could be on par with Atlantis myths, or even older lost cultures we've only whispered about in legends." Energized by the possibilities, we spent the next few days in a frenzy of preparation, transforming the Horizons deck into a high-tech workshop under the relentless Pacific sun. Our star player was the Aegis, TerraQuest's crown jewel, a cutting-edge submersible crafted from reinforced titanium alloy, sleek and arrow-shaped like a futuristic shark, about the size of a small bus. It was designed for extreme depths, with robotic manipulator arms that could delicately pluck samples without disturbing the site, ultra-high-resolution cameras that captured 4K footage in near-total darkness using bioluminescent lights, and advanced life support systems that recycled air and water for dives lasting up to 48 hours. We ran countless simulations in the ship's virtual reality rig, practicing maneuvers around simulated ruins to avoid collapses or currents. Alex calibrated the thrusters for precision control, tweaking the software to handle the chasm's unpredictable water flows, while Jordan and I packed specialized crates, watertight, foam-lined boxes for artifacts, complete with sensors to monitor humidity and shock. The air crackled with excitement. We joked about fame and fortune, high-fiving over blueprints, but beneath it all was an undercurrent of nerves. This wasn't just another dig. This felt monumental. Little did we know, our enthusiasm was like poking a sleeping giant. We were on the verge of awakening forces that had slumbered undisturbed for eons, secrets the ocean had guarded with jealous ferocity. The big day arrived at dawn. The Horizons deck bathed in the soft pink glow of sunrise as we prepped for launch. The sea was calm, a deceptive mirror reflecting the sky, but we knew the abyss below held no such peace. We suited up in our pressure-resistant jumpsuits, clipped on comms headsets, and climbed into the Aegis's cramped cockpit, a cocoon of glowing panels, joysticks, and reinforced glass portholes. I took the pilot's seat, my hands familiar on the controls from years of handling everything from cave-diving scooters to aerial drones. Alex settled in as co-pilot, his screens displaying real-time diagnostics for power, propulsion, and sensors. Jordan sat behind us, her station equipped for logging data, with a tablet for sketching and a voice recorder for notes. As the crane lowered us into the water with a gentle splash, the world above, the Horizons crew waving from the railings, faded like a dream. We submerged, the Aegis's thrusters humming to life as we began the long plunge into the ink-black depths. Pressure gauges climbed steadily, from atmospheres to tons per square inch, a reminder of the invisible weight pressing in from all sides. Bubbles trailed behind us, and the light dimmed until only our instruments illuminated the cabin. At first, it was all routine, the kind of dive we'd done a dozen times before. The engines purred smoothly, the hull creaked occasionally like an old house settling, normal under the increasing squeeze. We chatted lightly to ease the tension, Alex cracking jokes about sea monsters, Jordan reciting fun facts about deep-sea creatures like bioluminescent jellyfish that might float by. But as we passed the 5,000-meter mark, about halfway down, where the ocean turns from twilight to absolute void, things shifted. An unnatural chill seeped into the cabin, one that ignored our environmental controls and heaters set to a cozy 72 degrees. It felt like icy fingers slithering down my spine, raising goosebumps under my suit. I glanced at the temp readouts. Everything normal, but the cold persisted. Psychological, maybe, or so I told myself. Then came the visions, not quite dreams since we were wide awake, staring at our tasks. Hallucinations? Delusions from the depth? In hindsight, they were something far more sinister, bleeding through from another realm. It crept in subtly at first, like a trick of the eye in the dim glow of our screens. I'd blink to clear my vision from staring at the sonar, and in that split second, shadowy figures would flicker in my peripheral sight. Ghostly apparitions, clad in tattered, ragged tunics of rough-woven cloth, their forms translucent and wavering like heat haze over desert sand. One stood out vividly, a gaunt man from what seemed like a bygone age, his weathered face etched with lines of obsession, eyes alight with a feral hunger that had nothing to do with starvation. He hunched over a pile of gleaming stones, perhaps gems or gold nuggets, counting them obsessively, his fingers clawing them closer, while spectral figures around him withered in famine, their pleas ignored. The greed emanating from him was palpable, a toxic heat that made my stomach churn, as if his vice was infecting the air. I rubbed my eyes, attributing it to fatigue or the infamous rapture of the deep, nitrogen narcosis, a diver's haze from gas buildup under pressure. But I wasn't alone. Alex suddenly froze, his hands hovering over the controls. "Did you see that?" he whispered, his voice tight, face paling under the cabin lights. He described it haltingly, a woman apparition with wild, tangled hair, her hands dripping with what appeared to be fresh blood, leaning in close to a group of shadowy men, her lips moving in silent whispers. Those secrets she shared sparked flames of distrust, turning allies into backstabbers, all for her own ascent to power. Betrayal wrapped in seduction, a lust for dominance that corroded everything it touched. Jordan, clutching her notebook so hard her knuckles whitened, looked equally shaken. "I saw children. No, wait, not kids, but grown people warped by jealousy," she said, her British accent clipping the words. "They were sneaking through dark alleys, stealing trinkets and smashing what they couldn't take, just to deny others joy. Envy like poison, eating them from inside." We exchanged uneasy glances and forced nervous laughter, chalking it up to shared delirium from the dive, maybe bad air mix or psychological strain. But the visions persisted, growing in frequency as we descended further, unfolding like fragmented scenes from a nightmare film reel set in an era around 1650 BC, the Bronze Age of early civilizations with crude tools and brutal societies. They depicted sins in raw, unflinching detail, a knife flashing in the dark for a pouch of coins, murder driven by naked ambition, hooded figures in candlelit chambers plotting deceptions that toppled kings, bodies entangled in forbidden rites, chasing pleasures that hollowed the spirit and left only regret. These weren't random horrors, they felt otherworldly. Echoes of a forgotten time seeping into our reality, pulling us into their web of moral decay. As the ages sank deeper into the abyssal fracture zone, the darkness outside thickened, a suffocating void that seemed to pulse with malice. The deeper we went, the more the hauntings escalated, turning the sub's cramped cockpit into a crucible of dread. The overhead lights flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows that danced across the control panels without any electrical fault. Alex checked the diagnostics twice, his fingers trembling. Whispers slithered through our comms, not from the horizon above, but from somewhere else, some other place. They were guttural, jagged syllables, in a language Jordan, pale and wide-eyed, identified as resembling Proto-Sumerian, a dead tongue from 4,000 years ago. The words spoke of forbidden knowledge, secrets that promised power but demanded souls, cravings that devoured everything in their path. Each whisper felt like a needle in my mind, urging me to betray, to take, to destroy. I gripped the controls tighter, my knuckles white, trying to anchor myself to reality. Then Alex let out a scream that made my heart lurch. His eyes were locked on the sonar screen, where a ghostly figure materialized, not on the screen, but in it, a translucent silhouette of a man from some ancient nightmare. He was hammering molten metal into blades, not for protection, but for slaughter. His face twisted in sadistic glee as crimson streams, blood unmistakably, flowed around him. The figure turned, as if sensing us, and his eyes met Alex's, empty sockets, radiating a hunger for violence that made Alex recoil, knocking over his coffee mug. "It's not a monster," he stammered, voice cracking. "It's human, but worse. It loves the blood." The evil wasn't some grotesque beast. It was humanity stripped bare, its darkest impulses. Greed that raised empires, wrath that burned villages, lust that twisted innocence into perversion, amplified into something unholy. Jordan wasn't spared either. She clutched her notebook, her breaths shallow, as she described a vision that made my skin crawl. A starless night where cloaked figures gathered in a circle, their chants rising like a storm. They performed rituals that defiled nature itself, bodies contorted in grotesque, unnatural unions, not for love, but for a perverse mockery of creation, their faces alight with a sick ecstasy. "It's like they worshipped their own destruction," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sub's hum. The air grew heavier, as if the chasm itself was exhaling a miasma of ancient corruption, seeping through the Aegis's titanium hull. I felt it too, a sinister pull, a voice in my head urging me to abandon the mission, to claim whatever treasures we found for myself, to hell with Alex and Jordan. My own ambition, that relentless drive that had pushed me through countless digs, twisted into something vile, whispering that I deserved it all. I shook my head, sweat beading on my forehead, but the urge lingered like a poison. The apparitions grew bolder, no longer content to lurk in the corners of our vision. They invaded our screens, their ghostly hands clawing at the digital readouts, smearing static across the sonar like blood on glass. Faces pressed against the portholes, Impossible given the crushing pressure outside. Empty eyes like twin voids staring straight into us, mouths moving in silent screams or laughter. One figure, a woman with a crown of thorns, grinned as she dragged a spectral dagger across her own throat, her glee contagious, urging me to violence. The sub's interior felt like a trap, the walls closing in as paranoia took root. Alex snapped at Jordan, accusing her of hiding data to sabotage the mission, his voice edged with a mistrust I'd never heard from him. Jordan fired back, her usual calm shattered, yelling that my reckless piloting was going to get us all killed. I wanted to scream at them both, my own anger flaring unnaturally, as if the chasm was breathing its rot into our minds, sowing discord with every meter we descended. These weren't just hallucinations, they were echoes of a forgotten era, otherworldly fragments of humanity's basest sins, clawing their way into our reality to drag us down with them. Yet, in the midst of this terror, a grim clarity began to emerge, like a faint light in the fog. Between the visions, we huddled in the cockpit, our voices low and urgent, trying to make sense of the madness. "These aren't just ghosts," Jordan whispered, her hands shaking as she clutched her notes. "They're warnings, or remnants, of what consumed them. Greed that blinded entire cities, evil that spread like a plague, sins so vile they doomed whole societies." Alex, his face gaunt, nodded slowly. "It's like a mirror of the past, showing what happens when you chase power without limits. It's not random, it's us, reflected back. The hauntings forced us to confront our own flaws. I saw my ambition in those apparitions, the same drive that had me ignoring safety protocols to chase glory, now twisted into the same greed I'd seen in that stone-hoarding specter. Jordan admitted her obsession with uncovering truth sometimes blinded her to ethics, while Alex confessed his tech skills fed a hunger for control. But despite the fear gnawing at our sanity, we pressed on, driven by the same cursed curiosity that had doomed those ancient souls. We were moths to a flame we couldn't yet name. Finally, at the chasm's floor, over 11 kilometers down, the Aegis's floodlights sliced through the eternal dark, revealing the anomaly in all its terrifying majesty. The ruins sprawled before us, a vast city of cyclopean stone towers, their surfaces encrusted with millennia of sediment, barnacles, and glowing deep-sea algae that gave them an eerie, phosphorescent sheen. Carvings snaked across the stones, serpentine symbols that seemed to writhe under our lights, alongside humanoid figures with unnaturally long limbs and hollow eyes, unlike anything in known archaeology. Pre-Minoan, pre-Sumerian, pre-everything. It felt alien, yet disturbingly familiar, as if humanity's darkest dreams had been etched into the rock. We deployed the robotic arms, their whirs barely audible over our ragged breaths, collecting samples, stone tablets inscribed with a script that twisted like living things, metallic orbs that pulsed with a faint, unnatural energy in our sensors, and fragments of murals showing stars plummeting to earth in fiery streaks, as if the heavens themselves had fallen. The apparitions swarmed us then, a cacophony of sin made manifest. Gluttony in the form of a bloated figure gorging on spectral flesh. Wrath as a warrior cleaving through screaming crowds. Pride in a crowned specter laughing as cities burned at his feet. They clawed at our minds, their voices a deafening chorus of temptation and despair, urging us to join them in their endless cycle of destruction. My head throbbed, my vision swimming as I fought to focus on the controls. Jordan sobbed quietly, scribbling notes through her tears, while Alex muttered curses, his hands shaking as he secured the samples. We grabbed what we could, tablets, orbs, a single mural shard, and initiated the ascent. The Aegis groaning under the strain, its hull creaking like it was alive and in pain. As we rose, the apparitions' faces pressed closer, their void-like eyes promising we'd never escape the chasm's curse. The ocean wasn't just hiding a city, it was guarding a tomb of humanity's oldest, most unspeakable evils, and we'd just cracked it open. The Aegis broke the surface just as the Pacific sky burned crimson with the setting sun, and the Horizon's crew winched us aboard with practiced efficiency. My hands trembled as I unbuckled from the pilot's seat, the weight of what we'd seen still pressing on my chest like the ocean's depths. Alex and Jordan were silent, their faces pale, eyes hollow from the ordeal below. We hauled our precious cargo, sealed crates containing the stone tablets, humming orbs and mural fragments, across the deck to the Horizon's state-of-the-art laboratory, a sterile sanctuary of white walls, stainless steel tables, and humming analytical machines. The lab was our safe haven, a place of logic and science where we dissected countless artifacts before. But as we crossed the threshold, the air felt wrong, too cold, too still, as if the chasm's shadow had followed us up. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting stark shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. The hauntings, it turned out, hadn't stayed in the abyss. We secured the crates under bright halogen lamps, but the moment we cracked them open, the vision slammed back with a vengeance, more vivid and invasive than in the sub. As I leaned over the first tablet, its surface etched with jagged, twisting symbols that seemed to pulse faintly under the light, a vision hit me like a physical blow. I was no longer in the lab, but standing on a cracked, ash-covered plain under a sky roiling with black clouds. A flood roared in the distance, a towering wall of water swallowing a screaming city, men, women, children clawing at each other in desperation, their faces contorted with greed and terror as they hoarded useless gold and trinkets while the deluge consumed them. An apparition materialized beside me, a skeletal figure in a tattered robe, its eyes glowing like embers. It pointed at the drowning masses and laughed, a sound like breaking glass, mocking their futile struggle. I gasped, staggering back into the lab, the tablet cold under my fingers. The vision faded, but the laughter echoed in my skull, leaving a sick dread that churned my stomach. Jordan, hunched over another tablet with a magnifying loupe, wasn't spared either. Her hands shook as she traced the alien script, her voice halting as she translated fragments aloud. "It's stories of sky beings," she said, her British accent fraying with fear. "They came down, radiant, from beyond the stars, promising wisdom." But the tales twisted darker. Those beings taught humanity forbidden arts, how to forge weapons that burned flesh to ash, how to manipulate life itself through grotesque alchemy, turning men into abominations for pleasure or power. "It's not enlightenment," Jordan whispered, her glasses fogging with her ragged breaths. "It's corruption, knowledge that fueled endless vice, greed, and betrayal." As she spoke, her eyes darted to the lab's corners, where shadows seemed to writhe. She described an apparition that haunted her, a cloaked figure with no face, only a gaping maw, standing over a pit of writhing bodies, its voice a hiss of temptation that urged her to hoard the tablet's secrets for herself, to become the sole keeper of their power. She clutched her cross necklace, a rare glimpse of her private faith, and shook her head to dispel the vision, but her hands kept trembling. Alex, meanwhile, was at the spectrometry station, analyzing one of the metallic orbs we'd retrieved. The orb, about the size of a grapefruit, was a dull silver, its surface etched with faint, spiraling patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. His equipment pinged with anomalous readings, energy signatures that defied known physics, pulsing with a low-frequency hum that vibrated in our bones. "This isn't tech from any human era," Alex muttered, his usual bravado gone, his tattooed arms tense as he adjusted the sensors. Then he froze, his face draining of color. He described a vision that struck him mid-analysis, a vast forge lit by unnatural green flames. where figures hammered orbs like ours into existence, chanting in a tongue that burned his ears. The air in his vision reeked of sulfur, and the figures' hands bled as they worked, but they laughed, reveling in the creation of tools meant to enslave and destroy. "It's like they wanted to ruin everything," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The orb in his hands pulsed brighter for a moment, and I swore I saw a shadow flicker across its surface, a clawed hand, reaching out, then gone. I turned to the mural fragments, spread across a steel table like pieces of a cursed puzzle. The images were carved in bas-relief, depicting stars streaking down to earth in fiery arcs, crashing into a world of crude stone cities. Among the ruins stood beings with wings, not the serene angels of Sunday school, but something wrong, their feathers jagged and black, their faces cruel and radiant with a terrible beauty. "It's like they wanted to ruin everything," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The orb in his hands pulsed brighter for a moment, and I swore I saw a shadow flicker across its surface, a clawed hand, reaching out, then gone. I turned to the mural fragments, spread across a steel table like pieces of a cursed puzzle. The images were carved in bas-relief, depicting stars streaking down to earth in fiery arcs, crashing into a world of crude stone cities. Among the ruins stood beings with wings, not the serene angels of Sunday school, but something wrong, their feathers jagged and black, their faces cruel and radiant with a terrible beauty. They towered over humans who knelt in worship, offering up blood and gold. The scenes showed these beings teaching. One held a blade that glowed with unnatural light. Another poured liquid into a screaming man's mouth, twisting his form into something monstrous. The carvings seemed to move under my gaze, the figures' eyes following me, their lips curling into sneers. A vision hit me then, so vivid I dropped the fragment, the stone clattering on the table. I was in a torch-lit hall, watching these winged beings whisper to a king, their voices like honey laced with venom, urging him to conquer, to hoard, to defile. The king's eyes gleamed with madness, and his court descended into chaos, betrayal, murder, orgies of excess. The air stank of blood and incense, and I felt their whispers in my own mind, urging me to take the mural, to hide it, to claim its power. I stumbled back, heart pounding, and saw Jordan and Alex staring at me, their faces mirroring my horror. We worked through the night, fueled by coffee and fear, the lab's sterile walls no longer a refuge, but a cage where the visions grew stronger. Shadows moved in the corners, untouched by the lights. Equipment beeped without cause, and the air grew thick, like breathing through wet cloth. We pieced together the fragments in a fevered haze, our notes a chaotic mess of translations, sketches, and sensor data. Jordan's translations revealed more. The sky beings, called Watchers in the script, hadn't just taught, they'd corrupted, planting seeds of greed, wrath, and lust that spread like wildfire, turning cities into dens of sin. Alex's data showed the orbs emitted energy that disrupted neural patterns, possibly explaining our visions or amplifying them. My mural analysis pointed to a timeline before any known civilization, predating even the earliest Sumerian records by millennia. Then, in the early hours, as the ship rocked gently on the waves, it hit us like a thunderbolt. This wasn't just a lost city, it was a relic of a world before the deluge, the biblical flood that drowned humanity for its sins. The tablets, orbs, and murals weren't artifacts of a forgotten culture, but evidence of a civilization erased by divine wrath for embracing an ultimate evil. The apparitions haunting us weren't mere ghosts, they were echoes of those corrupted by the Watchers, the fallen angels of ancient lore, the Nephilim's mentors who plummeted to earth in rebellion. They'd taught mankind forbidden wisdom, arts of war, perversions of flesh, secrets that turned desire into destruction. The flood wasn't a myth, but a judgment, a cosmic reset to purge the poison we'd just unearthed. As the truth crystallized, the visions intensified one final time. A chorus of screams filled the lab, apparitions clawing at the air, their faces twisting in rage and despair, as if furious we'd uncovered their shame. Then, abruptly, they faded, the air lightening, the shadows retreating, as if our understanding had broken their hold. We sat in stunned silence, the lab quiet except for the hum of machines. Jordan's hands were clasped tight, Alex's head bowed, and I felt a chill that wasn't from the air conditioning.
We sealed the artifacts in lead-lined cases, vowing to lock them away in TerraQuest's deepest vaults. Some secrets, we agreed, were too dangerous to share, too potent to risk falling into hands driven by the same greed and ambition that had doomed that ancient world. As we stepped onto the deck, the dawn light breaking over the horizon, I looked back at the ocean, its surface calm but hiding a chasm that whispered of humanity's darkest fall. The truth would stay buried, drowned where it belonged, but the weight of it clung to us, a warning we'd carry forever.